Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Nadeem bhai, it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
To talk to one of my favorite people about one of the favorite things I like to talk about. Nadeem bhai needs no introduction. He's a legend. He's a pioneer of the financial services industries. As an entrepreneur in Pakistan, we always say that we stand on the shoulders of giants. So a lot of the building blocks that were created earlier on in the financial services industry were laid by Nadeem bhai. And I want to speak a bit about that. We're talking about this book, which I've had the privilege to read a few times now. And A Bank is Born is not just a story about a bank and creating a successful scale-up of a bank and dealing with the various issues involved with creating a bank in Pakistan, but it's a story about financial inclusion and creating financial services that actually uplift the entire population, uplift the economy. So to start off with, I think the best way to start a story is in the middle.
Okay.
What I'd like to jump to and ask you is, you launched this bank against all odds, and I've heard the story from you a few times on how you got the capital together and managed to launch a very sort of pioneering bank in the early days. We'll speak about that in a bit, but I want to fast forward. The bank did so well that you had offers for acquisition.
Correct.
Telenor, which is one of the largest groups, it's like a telco group, as you know, everybody knows, which later on launched EasyPass on the back of your work. So I want to take you back to the day that you found yourself in a conference room negotiating the acquisition for this bank that you had built with the Norwegians. So if you could walk us through the final moments when you were at the table and you were having a discussion and how you arrived on the price and how you concluded that transaction.
Certainly. Incidentally, EasyPaisa was launched by me and my team, not after our exit. So we are the pioneers of that. So it's a very interesting story. In the first phase, Telenor acquired 51% of the bank, and myself and the other shareholders were left with 49%. And at that time, they valued the bank at $25 million. And at that time, we were losing money. So we were still valued at 25, and they invested $12.5 million. So there was no cash out, but it wasn't just the capital injection, it was the association with Telenor. Just the launch they did of EasyPaisa was $500,000. And suddenly we had access to 150,000 agents of Telenor where we were selling airtime, which we made into banking agents. So we changed the whole banking paradigm where you had to physically go to a branch of a bank, which are incidentally about 17,000 in total. And here we had a network where you could deposit money, withdraw money, make a transfer in your neighborhood. Owners didn't go to play golf on Sundays, so they were open. So it changed the banking paradigm. But coming back to your question, Monis, so we came to a stage where I wanted to exit and I wanted to do something else. And this was 11 years after we'd created Tameer Bank and EasyPaisa. And I was negotiating with the local team and we were not making any headway. So I decided to get on a plane and go to Norway and meet the chairman, who incidentally had 2 days to retire. So my objective was to close the deal within 2 days, or the new chairman would come in and then the whole new process would start. So I'm going to put some color in the story. I normally travel with 2 wallets, a foreign wallet with foreign credit cards and a local wallet. Landed at the airport, got to the hotel, tried to pay the cab driver, and I didn't have my foreign wallet. Luckily, they accepted my local credit card. Then went to the hotel, and they said, we don't have your reservation, you're at the wrong hotel. But since the head office was walking distance, I decided to, again, use my local credit card. So I walked into the deal with zero money in my hands because I didn't have my wallet, I didn't have any foreign currency. Baksas, the chairman of Telenor globally at that time, was his last day. So I had a figure in mind. I had a figure for valuation of the bank, which in my mind was $100 million. And I had a figure of what I wanted out of this transaction. Okay. And obviously, the Merchants Acquisition Group working for Telenor had given him his working as well. And I told Baksas, I said, this is your last step. You can either walk away with a claim to having acquired Easy Pesa, which subsequently, incidentally, was worth $410 million within 1 year. And this will be your part of your name, or, we can negotiate all this. Net result was, he agreed to my two terms, the money I had in my mind and the $100 million valuation. As we came down, the M&A team saw me. He said, well, basically, तुमने क्या जादू किया chairman पे, he's agreed to your terms. And I said, well, Telenor ka chairman, I'm just, the owner of a small bank. A year after, I called the M&A team. I said, किसने किस पे जादू किया? The bank you just sold for $420 million. You've taken entire money out yourself, the all amount you paid me, and you still have 55%. But I have no regrets. So that's the story how the deal was concluded.
There was also a story you told me about a piece of paper that you
Well, that was earlier on, right?
So later on, I suppose, once your valuation had started skyrocketing, mashallah, and there's a story here as well. I mean, I think it's very instructive how you entered into this deal at a 25 million valuation.
That's the paper story.
That's a paper story.
So the first acquisition that came, we have left with 3 months of money left to pay salaries. And this was the first acquisition of 25 million. The acquisition process had gone very well, lekin Telenor ka India mein license suspend ho gaya and they lost about $1 billion. Because the way the license was given, the government said was suspect and they suspended the license. Their actual stock value fell. And as a consequence, this local deal then became a head office deal. तो उधर मेरे सामने M&A 8-10 लोग बैठे हुए थे. I was sitting on the other side. And they quoted a figure much lower than what we had originally agreed. And I said, ये deal नहीं करनी मैंने. I wrote a number on the piece of paper, $25 million. And I handed it to them and I said, this is my number. I'm going to go out and have a cigarette, okay? And if you want a deal, let me know. If you don't want a deal, don't let me. मैं बाहर गया, मैंने एक cigarette पी, कोई बाहर नहीं आया. I lit up my second cigarette, फिर भी कोई बाहर नहीं आया. Up there I thought I had overplayed my hand and थोड़ी बहुत मेरी परेशानी होगी कि 3 महीने के पैसे बाकी रह गए थे. Finally they came out, I said, okay, 25 done. So that's the paper story.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of us have had the opportunity to be in a boardroom in that sort of environment, and it takes a very bold individual to be able to do that and to walk out and walk back in still. Now I want to go a bit further because the value creation was tremendous. They put in $12+ million. They have a stake in the bank, and then a lot of good things happened. And the valuation increased, and you still had substantial equity in the bank. So the real sort of kicker you got was sort of a subsequent rise in the value of this asset that you helped create. Can you speak about that?
So, we were starved. I had put in all my money. So what happened, just to put this in context, initially, when we launched the bank, we raised $10 million, and I, through a debt and personal money, I had worked 27 years for Citigroup, I had some money, put in $6 million, okay? The first year, because we were city bankers, we were wearing our suits and ties, we thought we could walk in water and not get wet, and we knew microfinance, and the market was idiots, our normal Citibank arrogance. We had 25,000 customers with no default. और हमने सोचा कि यार मार्केट को तो पता ही नहीं, हम सिखाएंगे इनको माइक्रोफाइनेंस. अगले साल our default went up to 25%. So we had a burn of all the expenses we had, and then we had bad debts at the same time. And then, at that time, we basically, I had to put my last $1 million in as well, and I was tapped. I had no money left. And then we pivoted, and we learned how to reposition the bank. And that's how we created the initial value. We created a goal-based lending product. We created a verification process. And that's when, and the other thing that we did was, we kind of felt that the branchless banking model, this branchless banking, Easy Pesa, Jazz you see today, at that time, State Bank came up with the regulation. The world was telco-led models, and I was pretty sure it was going to be a bank-led model. So we positioned ourselves as a bank that the telcos would come after by doing homework already. And then the State Bank came up with the bank-led model, and then the telcos came around shopping, and we were head and shoulders above everybody else. So that was the initial value. And then when we got the 12.5 million, we get Tariq Mahor, Tariq Anwar, and many of the Tameer team sitting over here. For 8 years, we were lending money, and our default plus fraud was less than 1%.
Wow.
The amazing franchise we created. Uske aage kya hua, that's another story.
So this is, I think, as far as I remember, you have always been here and a prominent player in this industry, and I think you always will be, especially with the stuff you're doing now. So, in a way, you're sort of like a vampire, and I mean that in like a positive way. You've seen everything. And what we call a bank, you say a bank is born, but when you talk about the banks you're involved with, it's not the same beast as when you started. Can you talk about that journey a little bit? What was a bank when you started, and what is a bank now?
You're talking about Tenor Bank.
I'm talking about when you started with Tameer and now what you're doing with Ratni.
Oh, what am I doing? Okay, so
It's changed completely.
Yeah, totally. So I've reinvented myself 4 times in my life. मैंने 27 साल Citibank में गुजारे as an international banker, investment banking, consumer banking in about 8 different countries. Okay, so that's my first life experience. And then I switched to microfinance. तो मेरी बीवी ने कहा जो शख्स फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर से डील करता था अब वो वैसे फाइनेंस करता है विच इज़ व्हाट माइक्रो फाइनेंस वाज एंड आई लर्नड अबाउट ट्रूली आई लर्नड अबाउट पाकिस्तान सो आई देन became a grassroots banker. So after I sold Tameer Bank, I started Planet 10, which is a tech investment company. So it invests in startups with a simple criteria. Are you changing the customer journey? Can you scale? Will the customer be willing to pay for this? And we invested in about 50 companies. So I started learning investments as opposed to microfinance. And again, with the grace of God and because of my team, we are successful. We're the only tech investment company, venture company, that gives out dividend. We've been paying out dividends for the last 4 quarters. And the company is worth about $55 million right now in Pakistan. And then my latest venture is a Sharia-compliant digital bank. So it's bank, but it's a very different model. मोमिन का शेर है कि उम्र तो सारी कटी इश्क़ बुता में मोमिन आखिरी वक्त में क्या खाक मुसलमान होंगे लेकिन मैं मुसलमान होने की आखिरी वक्त में कोशिश कर रहा हूँ. आई एम लर्निंग अबाउट शरिया. आई एम लर्निंग अबाउट द स्पिरिट ऑफ शरिया इज़ how we can use that with materially changing the customer journey and provide a solution set to the bottom of the pyramid. So our segments are women, youth, S of the SME, agriculture under 5 acres, gig workers, blue collar workers, all those people which don't have access to bank. हकीकत में जो commercial banks हैं ना यहाँ कुछ बैठे होंगे मेरे दोस्त, they are not commercial banks, they are deposit takers. उनके लिए मैंने एक शेर लिखा था क्यों कर संभालते हमें वो कमर्शियल बैंक्स जो खुद टी बिल्स के नशे में ब्रांचेस खोलते रहे. फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशन की राह में डिजिटल बैंक्स उठ खड़े हुए और कमर्शियल बैंक्स गुबारे सफ़र देखते रहे. द रियलिटी इज द कमर्शियल बैंक्स अभी आपने HBL का प्रॉफिट देखा है 114 बिलियन रुपीस. 70% of the income is coming from lending to the government of Pakistan, T-bills and treasury bills. The entire banking industry, which increased its profitability by 97% in 2022, more so in 2023, lends to 2.1 million active loan customers. The lending to SMEs is now under 4%. So this is a great model. Branches खोलें, दुनिया में branches बंद हो रही हैं, हमारे यहाँ branches बढ़ रही हैं. Branches खोलें, deposits लें, हुकूमत पाकिस्तान को lend करें, risk free. और ये मॉडल तब्दील नहीं होने वाला. इसलिए जो बाकी नए प्लेयर्स आ रहे हैं वो फील there's an opportunity, who want to lend to customers have a huge opportunity. Some risks, but huge opportunity.
When you started with Tameer, I mean, you were again focused on the bottom of the pyramid, essentially micro finance. And us waqt, in order to go and service these sort of mom and pop enterprises, or businesses, the S in the SMEs, it was a difficult job. You had to aggregate these really fragmented, small sort of businesses with ticket sizes that were small. It was very hard to make this profitable. You had field agents, I'm assuming, that would do a lot of paperwork. It's expensive. And I think this is the reason why the banks have a very easy life. They invest in T-bills, they make a lot of money, but they're not helping the economy, really. I mean, helping the government, great. But What's changed now? You seem to be very optimistic about the S in SME. Why is it now much more exciting, and why can we make much more of an impact today than you were even able to make back then?
3 or 4 things. एक तो we were learning, this was my team and I were learning microfinance. So it was a high risk proposition. हमने कभी microfinance नहीं की थी. मेरी 27 साल की जर्नी मैंने पाकिस्तान में 5 साल काम किया था. I became an entrepreneur at the age of 48. So that was my big risk-taking decision. And again, God was kind. नीयत हमारी ठीक थी तो we were rewarded. Lot of those learnings we can use now. We were manual, we were feet on the ground, we were our own balance sheet. What we are doing now is banking as a service, which is very different. Banking service का मतलब ये है कि हम मोनिस की कंपनी के पास जाके कहते हैं इनके पास अगर 18 मिलियन कस्टमर हैं दुकान में और रोज़ी में कि आप सोचें कि आपको बैंकिंग लाइसेंस मिल गया. What financial services do you want to provide to your customers? Our license, our risk, our funding, end customer is yours. Let's get that customer. उसकी financial services need किया है, lending की है, savings की है, investments की है, payments की है. So now we don't have feet on the ground. It's a very different model. Theoretically, we can have a scale which is 10 times more than we did with physical feet on the ground. So that's the big change. And plus the model now, as I said, is Sharia compliant. And मैं आपको बताऊं 15 साल पहले मैंने एक सर्वे किया था जब हम तामीर बैंक में थे और हमने कहा कि मालूम करते हैं कि लोग शरिया कंप्लाइंट चाहते हैं या कन्वेंशनल लेंडिंग चाहते हैं. तो पहले तो वी वो एट द बॉटम ऑफ द पिरामिड. लोगों ने कहा सर अभी पैसे मिल जाएं बड़ी बात है, ये शरिया तो बात की बात है. लेकिन 10% ने कहा कि ये शरिया आपका फ्रॉड है. हाउ इज़ इट दैट यू आर इक्वल टू काइबोर और आप लॉसेस तो देते नहीं हैं. 10% ने कहा कि अगर आप हमें दारुल उलूम का फतवा ला के दे दें वी आर गुड. 80% ने कहा कि अगर आपकी लेंडिंग हम कमर्शियल बैंक से सस्ती है तो हम इस्तेमाल करेंगे. बट दैट थॉट प्रोसेस हैज चेंज. आई डिड अ फोकस ग्रुप अक्रॉस द बोर्ड विद young men and women, with the SME. Now 80% of the people in Pakistan, if you can give them a Sharia solution, would lend themselves or avail that Sharia solution as opposed to a conventional solution. And that's why you see the likes of Mizan, some of the other commercial banks, Sharia compliant banks growing much, much faster than regular banking.
I mean, this whole concept of banking as a service, it's sort of revolutionary. In the early days of banking, it was very much a walled garden and har cheez pe hamara hi logo hona chahiye aur hamari hi cheez hai. And this concept of building this layer and opening up to other platforms is actually very, very bold. And like you're saying, if you have a digital onboarding of your customers and everything's happening in a digital way, your cost of acquisition is much less and cost of your sort of collections and your disbursement. So this is really a revolutionary new place that you are entering. Now, every step of your journey, you have been at the forefront of innovation for its time, which means that you must have been having a lot of sort of conversations with the regulator to allow you to do crazier and crazier things, including now. How has that experience been?
I've been at the forefront because I'll tell you, because the secret I believe to the success of the ventures I've done is that I surround myself with people who are smarter than me. And I'll say this humbly, that's not easy. But I surround myself with people who are smarter than me, but not wiser than me. Because wisdom necessarily doesn't comes from age, it comes from experience. And when you put your own money on the table, you learn very fast. So imagine we're in a building, I'm on the 80th floor, and my people who work with me are on the 70th or 60th floor. And eventually they'll get to the 90th floor and I'll be on the 85th. But at the moment, my horizon is much longer. I can connect the dots much faster than they can. So banking as a service, just like Easy Paisa was, is not an invention globally. Easy Paisa se pehle M-Pesa Kenya mein bahut kamyab tha. Gcash was very successful in Philippines. But to bring it to Pakistan and execute was the challenge. So banking as a service exists globally, but no one's brought it to Pakistan. So the challenge is to understand the local lacunas and the local nuances and execute. And the regulator has always been very forthcoming. because they understand the impact Easy Pesa could make, with this branchless banking model, and therefore they did it in a controlled environment. They understand the impact banking as a service can make. And therefore they've created regulations which allow us, the whole industry, not just me. Okay? But हमारी एक thinking है, हमेशा रहती है कि अगर मैंने नहीं बनाया तो something wrong with it. Okay, so whoever breaks out of that thinking will have the opportunity to have 70, 80 million customers universe to operate with, and even if they do 10% of that, so Rakmi Bank in 5 years' time could have more customers than the entire commercial banking industry because they're following that same model that they have before. And we have an opportunity to use what I call other people's railroad. जिन लोगों ने अपने customer base बनाया हुआ है, उसके data points हैं, we can leverage that rather than acquire our own.
So in the last 2-3 years, everybody knows this VC investment had skyrocketed in Pakistan. Lots of new startups were created. Lots of them imploded. There's some still around. There's some still growing. And this is a pattern we've seen everywhere. It happened in the US as well. So it's not only in Pakistan, it happened in India. This is a cycle that we see. So we shouldn't feel horrible about it. Ye hota hai. Iske baad ek aur wave, I think, aana hai, inshallah, aayega. But you were there in the early days, and we were watching you make these small investments in many, many, many sort of ventures. And we've seen a lot of other VCs who've made large investments in a lot of plays that are no longer around. You have some very interesting investments that are scaling and that are doing really well. Can you talk about those?
So the philosophy was that we would go in at seed. Seed ka matlab hai idea level pe. And we would take a bet on the entrepreneur and his or her team. 70% on the jockey, the entrepreneur, 20% on the horse, the idea, 10% on the turf, whether the idea is relevant to Pakistan or not. That was the philosophy. Since initially it was my own money, we didn't have an investment committee, I used to make decisions in 5 minutes, talking to the individuals. Get there, comes up, some were right, some were wrong. We lost some money, but let's say we gained a lot more than we lost. The bet at the seed level is on the individual. The bet at Series A is on the idea and growth. So large investments that made, and some of them are not successful, were because these guys have so much funds, they can put 10, 20, $30 million in a company. We are putting maximum of $500,000 at best. Okay, we didn't go beyond $500,000. But our companies are way more successful than any of the VC funds in Pakistan. In fact, the VC funds are investing in our companies. We give out a dividend every quarter. So I think the other thing also, Monis, I am very close to my founders. So the role, in my view, a startup just doesn't need capital, it needs a mentor. It needs somebody who's going to keep your feet on the ground, somebody who's going to open the doors for you to execute your deals, somebody who's going to take you to the regulators and get you the necessary regulation to be demonstrated, who can share your tech stack and tell you what needs to be done. VCs meet you once a quarter. Okay? You run your company, you've got 2 very successful companies. You're running them. I mean, I participate, we've got people over here who are part of the Planet N group. It's because, it's the level of interaction I have with my team, so I can get a very good sense of the pulse and the help that they require. Capital is just one element to be successful. I think mentorship, access to market, regulatory cover are equally important, and people don't realize that. They think, पैसे आ गए, सब चीज़ ठीक हो जाएगी, उससे नहीं होता काम.
Say that's absolutely, I agree. So you have been hustling at the forefront of innovation for a very, very, very long time. And I know that in my small experience, it takes a lot of energy, there's a lot of stress, there are a lot of challenges to being a founder and dealing with the ups and downs. But you've managed to sustain it for longer than anybody I know. What kind of toll has it had on you? How do you manage this lifestyle, the stress that comes with this?
So, after I sold Tameer Bank, God was very kind to me and I became financially independent. And I didn't need to work anymore. But if I didn't work, ek to meri beewi pagal ho jati when she's at home. Okay, but she's not at home, she's more busy than I am. But I would have gone crazy. So I knew that I couldn't take this money, invest it, and just live off the returns of that capital. What basically creates the passion in me is the ability or the desire to create something new, something big which changes an ecosystem play, which changes the lives of people and the people I'm working with. And if you talk to the people, the new book on Planet N is just starting. And it's going to be interesting because one is going to have two aspects. I'm going to be talking as to why I invested in that company, and the investees are going to be talking about what their lens was. So it's going to become very interesting Bible for startups because it's going to have 10, 15 companies in it which are going to give their story as well. So rather than just my lens, it would be their lens as well. So I'm 68, okay, and I start my day at 4 a.m. But I finish my day at 10 a.m., 10 p.m. also, okay? So, but the point is the key in my view is the use of your time. My meetings don't run beyond 20 minutes. I tell my people, you'll put your hand in your pocket and you'll find 5,000 rupees, but you won't find 5 minutes. Time is a depreciating currency. You've got to figure out how to use your time. You just can't deal with, I've had 5 meetings already since I've been here, and I've been here an hour and a half, 20-minute meetings. So if you manage your time and you have an idea of what you want to achieve, and you can surround yourself with people, get your ego to accept, you can be people who are smarter than you and surround yourself with them, then you become like a symphony director where you're orchestrating things. Okay, and then we have 36 companies in Planet N and Rakmi Bank right now. तो ये मुमकिन हो जाता है. और अगर आपका पैशन है कि मैंने तब्दीली करनी है कुछ, okay, I'm going to create an ecosystem play which will impact millions of people just like Easy Paisa did, then that passion keeps you going. And that's what keeps me going.
Do you think today you have an ability to make more impact than you did back when you started with Tameer? And if so, why?
So Tameer, there were two impacts in Tameer. Tameer had maybe 500,000 lending customers, which we created from scratch. We created the non-group model and we took risk on on the individual. Easy Paisa created a revolution. A revolution is defined as millions of people changing their behavior. मेरी आपकी ज़िंदगी में पाकिस्तान में अगर आप देखें 3 रेवोल्यूशन आए, मैं पॉलिटिकल रेवोल्यूशन की बात नहीं कर रहा. एक आपके पास जब फीचर फ़ोन आया, millions of people moved from the landline. फिर स्मार्टफोन आया. Those were both revolutions. And to extend that, Easy Paisa आया. Easy Paisa moved 6% of Pakistan's GDP in a year. It was that successful. Serious numbers. मेरा ख्याल है कि if we do Rakmi right, using this banking as a service, and in our list we already talking to people, between them they have about 70 million customers. So अगर हम 10 से 15% भी इसको over 5 साल में convert कर लें, then we are talking about 7 to 10 million active loan customers, while the commercial banking industry is 2.1 million customers. If we come up with innovation like ideas that I've been talking about, which will deliver, which some of it you've delivered, it's digitalized committee हमारे यहाँ पाकिस्तान में लोग सेव बैंक में क्यों नहीं करते? इसलिए नहीं करते कि आपका नेगेटिव रेट ऑफ रिटर्न है. Inflation is at 30%, you're getting 10, 15% negative rate of return. So a lot of people committee डालते हैं. कमेटी डालने के लिए आपको लोग ढूंढने पड़ते हैं, बट मोनिस की कंपनी ने ऑलरेडी इंस्टीट्यूशनल कर दिए कि आप इनके साथ कमेटी डालें, यू डोंट नीड टू द अदर पीपल, और ये गारंटी करेंगे आपकी कमेटी. दैट्स अ थिंग. फ्रैक्शनल गोल्ड, मैं आपको कहूँ कि आपको मैं एक ऐप दूंगा, उसमें इस वक्त आप 100 रुपये का सोना खरीद सकते हैं. फ्रैक्शनल रियल एस्टेट में आपको कहूँ कि आप 5,000 की आप एक बिल्डिंग में हिस्सेदार बन सकते हैं. दोनों में आपको मैं लिक्विडिटी दे दूंगा, जब मर्जी आप बेच दें. देयर विल ऑलवेज बी अ बाय ऑफर स्प्रेड. You need that kind of innovation. So we think a lending side pay, with the people that we've been speaking to, we can get to beyond 5 million customers in 5 years. Lending customers, just double the industry right now. And with our saving and investment solutions, we can have an even bigger number. So I think the opportunity is there. And the good thing is that we are not funded by a VC. We're funded by an institutional investor, which is already in Pakistan. The eventual investor in Rakmi Bank is Kuwait Investment Authority, which already has a view in Pakistan. So we are not subject to the vagrancies of a VC saying, okay, funding is dried up. So I think we have an opportunity, we just need to execute. It's not going to be easy, because अगर आसान होता तो कोई भी कर लेता. क्योंकि ये मुश्किल है, फिर देखेंगे कौन करता है.
It's very interesting. That seems like there are actually three sort of waves that are flowing at the same time that really have a promising impact on sort of what you're doing in the future of what you're doing. I think one, if I could just sort of add in, the economy is going online. I think it's clear. Overall economy may be shrinking, but the online economy is surely and certainly growing even in these times. Digital payments have increased 9x in the last 3 years. Online transactions now exceed the number of ATM withdrawals, paper-based. Major milestone, everybody has a smartphone, everybody has wallets, State Bank, Ross, all of that's happening. But the second thing which you talked about is you've been innovating products for a long time, and now with the digital enablement of these offline products which you're working on and creating, it adds a multiplier on top of that. It seems like the third very interesting thing you're doing is that you're opening up your platform for other players like me to play in your sandbox. I think these three are very powerful.
Absolutely right. 65% of our people are under 35, another 55 under 25, 70 million smartphones growing by the day, but we even have a solution for feature phone people. So clearly Pakistan is moving on its digital journey. ये जो numbers and digitalization ke, they are just tip of the iceberg because in fact we're a cash economy, 7.5 trillion rupees printed but not in any bank account. That's where the opportunity is. That's tougher to crack. ये तो banks ने अपनी paper को कर दिया है digital, which is great because people are getting used to doing online payments, peer-to-peer payments, e-commerce payments, all kind of payments. The big thing is going to come where we can take that 7.5 trillion cash floating in the system and try and digitize that. And that's where we think there's major opportunity working with the SME and other solutions of creating cash into electronic cash.
So, I love asking you these questions about the past and the future because I don't think there's anybody who has more experience to sort of extrapolate from what's happened. So based on everything you've seen and everything you're doing, and obviously you're plugged in, what does the next 5 years look like? As a Pakistani, what am I going to see 5 years from now that I probably am not expecting and I'm not seeing today?
Well, very difficult to say, but actually, I'm
trying to stump you.
I'll give you the bad news. The bad news is I don't think our political setup is going to change materially where we are right now. I'm unfortunate. And I'm a very optimistic person. 99% of my investment is in Pakistan, not outside Pakistan, because I believe this is where the big opportunity is. Okay? And I believe that this is where we're going to make a change. And this is where we created a $420 million company in Pakistan by Pakistanis. So that opportunity exists. So what's not going to change, I think the political setup, unfortunately, and the interventions are not going to change. So we're going to have a tough time on that side. I think the cash economy, digital economy is going to take longer than other places because if you look at the number of registered taxpayers we have, actual paying is about 1.5 million. So people don't want to come into the tax net because as soon as they don't want to go digital because when you get digital, the transaction gets recorded and you potentially become under the tax issue. But I think given a youth that we have, the use of digital solutions is materially going to increase. And they are students right now and they'll move on to get jobs and they will be using, they don't want to go to a branch. Branches दुनिया में कम होंगी, हमारी बढ़ेंगी because हुकूमत पाकिस्तान को हमेशा ज़रूरत होगी फाइनेंसिंग की, बैंक्स के पास हमेशा पैसे होंगे देने के लिए. I don't see the commercial model changing materially. वो डिजिटल खेलेंगे ज़रूर, okay? वो एक स्पीच आएगी कि जी वी आर अ टेक्नोलॉजी कंपनी विद अ बैंकिंग लाइसेंस. दूसरी स्पीच बंदा आएगा मैंने डिजिटल ब्रांच बना दिए. तो पहले आप जाके गाड़ी की पार्किंग ढूंढें, फिर आप गाड़ी पार्क करें, फिर आप ब्रांच में जाएं, वो डिजिटल ब्रांच है, उसमें टेलर्स नहीं है. So I'm not worried too much. I respect my competition, but that's not where I think my competition will come from. My competition for digital competition is going to come from non-financial institutions, from the likes of Rosie, Dukaan, Kareem, Daraz, Food Panda, people with very large customer bases. Now, rather than them wanting to acquire a license and get under the scrutiny of State Bank, my view is, why do you want to do that? Work with us. We'll take the State Bank headed, use our funding, provide any financial services you want, and that's where the big change is going to come. विद एम्बेडेड क्रेडिट्स का ये मतलब है कि ये जितने भी आप फूड पेंडा से जब फूड ऑर्डर करते हैं तो जो रेस्टोरेंट्स हैं उनको हम फंड कर सकते हैं, हमारे पास उनका डेटा है कि उन पर कितनी ऑर्डर जाते हैं। जो होम शेफ्स हैं उनके, जो ख़वातीन खाना बना रही हैं, उनको हम फंड कर सकते हैं, बिकॉज हमें पता है कि ज़ुबैदा खातून एक महीने में कितने ऑर्डर्स आते हैं। ओके, जो इनके राइडर्स हैं हम उनको फंड कर सकते हैं। तो दिस इज़ वेयर द इंटरवेंशंस विल टेक प्लेस एंड क्रेडिट। इस मुल्क में कमर्शियल बैंक सिर्फ 2.1 मिलियन लोगों को कर्जा देते हैं, 2.1 मिलियन इंडिविजुअल्स, द ट्रेविस्टी। The microfinance industry has another 8.5 million customers, out of which about 4.5 are nano credit. Okay, so productive loans are probably 10% of that. So huge opportunity for somebody who wants to take the risk. We are prepared to lose $1 million in building our algorithm. Now, when you take that mindset, you're prepared to lose money for your algorithm to learn before you scale, then you get the algorithm that's going to give you the scale where you can get 10 million borrowing customers. हमारे यहाँ ये risk appetite नहीं है, because the easy way is to lend to the government of Pakistan. So there's an opportunity for people who want to take that risk. So, what you're saying changes. I see a lot more automation, lot more digitization, but not at the scale you've seen in other countries, but much slower, because we remain a cash economy, and breaking that cash economy is going to be very, very tough. Because right now, if you do a digital transaction, you get taxed. आप cash transaction करें, कोई tax नहीं है. So why do you want to do a digital? It's convenient, but this point was demonstrated by Easy Paisa. Easy Paisa में because convenience इतनी थी कि लोग उसको इस्तेमाल कर रहे थे और टैक्स देने को तैयार थे. तो अगर आप कन्वीनियंस इतनी देंगे और सिक्योरिटी देंगे तो लोग फिर इस्तेमाल करने को तैयार होंगे, वरना वो कैश में ही काम करते रहेंगे.
ये जो अभी इंटरवेंशंस आ रहे हैं स्टेट बैंक की तरफ से, रास्ट P2M, everybody is talking about it, and digitizing cash in at the merchant level, do you think this will move the needle in a significant way, or it will be a sort of a small add-on to the ecosystem?
It will take time. देखें, हम इंडिया की बात करते हैं, UPI, which is the equivalent of RASP, Unified Payment Integration System. इंडिया में जो डिजिटल जंप आया था ना, वो जब आया था जब उन्होंने करेंसी चेंज की थी. जब करेंसी नहीं थी तो आपको डिजिटल ट्रांजैक्शन करने थे. ठेले वाले में भी आप पैसे ही नहीं था देने के लिए, आप डिजिटल ट्रांजैक्शन कर रहे थे. 5 साल उनकी जीडीपी में इम्पैक्ट हुआ, लेकिन जब करेंसी आ गई तो अगर डिजिटल यहाँ से यहाँ बढ़ा, इधर नीचे आ गया, बट इट वॉज अ क्वांटम जंप, बिकॉज पीपल वेंट थ्रू अ फेज जहाँ दी ओनली सोल्यूशन वॉज डिजिटल. हमारे पास ऑब्वियसली ऐसा इंटरवेंशन कोई नहीं है. तो अगर आप किसी ठेले वाले के पास जाते हैं या किसी को कहते हैं कि यार तुम कैश लेते हो, अब तुम डिजिटल पेमेंट ले लो, मुझे 0.5% इस पर फीस दे दो, और जब कैश चाहिए 15 रुपये दे के ATM से निकाल लेना. देखो सर, आप पागल हो गए, ये आपका सोल्यूशन है, अपने पास रखिए, मुझे क्या फ़ायदा है. अगर मैं उसको कहता हूँ कि यार ये तुम डिजिटल ट्रांजैक्शन करोगे, इसमें के खिलाफ अगर तुम 100 रुपये का डिजिटल ट्रांजैक्शन करते हो, 50 रुपये मैं कर्जा दे दूँगा क्योंकि मुझे ऑडिट ट्रेल मिल गया, देन से ओके चले मैं सोचता हूँ. तो द प्रॉब्लम इज आवर इंडस्ट्री इज प्रोडक्ट फोकस. प्रोडक्ट बना लिया, फिर कस्टमर को ढूंढते रहते. दे नॉट कस्टमर फोकस कि कस्टमर की लेंस क्या कह रही है और मैं उसके खिलाफ से एक सर्विस बना.
Sir, in all of this sort of accomplishments and high stress, high gear, my wife just walked in, so it's a very relevant question. How important is one's spouse in this journey?
देखिए, मेरी स्पाउस तो सियासतदान है, जो भी बात करूँगा उस तक पहुँच जाएगी. ओके,
Camera be on. Yes?
Very simple. I don't think people like Monis and me can be close to what we've achieved without our spouses standing behind us. In my case, I'm standing behind my spouse because she's more successful than I am. मैंने अपनी तमाम इन्वेस्टमेंट्स जो मैंने 27 साल में कमाए थे, एक बैंक में डालने का फैसला किया. And I decided to move from a tax-free salary from Dubai and come back to Pakistan and work for the first time. This wasn't my money, it was our money. Because when you're married, that money is joined, it's not your money. Actually, the money you've made is our money, the money your wife makes is her money. That's the formula, okay? And you'll have a very successful marriage. She backed me, she said, this is what you want to do? Go ahead. So and then obviously we went through many challenges in Tameer Bank, and as I said, Tameer Bank, some of the people sitting over here. And if your spouse, and I've got Noor sitting over there, जो मुझे complain करता है मैंने उसको किताब में नाम नहीं डाला, Noor, next किताब में तेरा नाम है, okay? And his wife is sitting behind him, Nasreen. If she doesn't support him, he can't do what needs to be done. So spouses, both ways, without them, it's not possible. You're not an island. You can't manage that, especially in the world of startup. The stresses you go through, the challenges you have. पैसे खत्म हो गए 3 महीने के पैसे रह गए. Without your spouse saying it's all right, hang in there, that doesn't work.
No, I agree. It takes a tremendous support system from all quarters, especially the home quarters. And
दूसरी बात ये कि if you really want to be, getting out the biggest card I have, get out of the doghouse card, is learn how to cook. Okay, I'm serious. Okay, many a time that will work for you.
I was just about to ask you about that. Was my next question. Okay, obviously, I think one of the the secrets of your very successful marriage is your ability to cook amazing food. So, how does that play into all of this work, professional life? Cooking, is it an outlet for you? What do you get out of cooking?
You can't be defined or define yourself by the work you do. You can't. If you do, then it's too narrow of a life. You've got to have something outside your work which you're passionate about. Can be anything. You want to write, you want to cook, you want to, learn languages, whatever you want to do. You want to excel at sport. You've got to have something outside your work life which you want to be passionate about. And have the same, if not more, of the passion to excel in what you're going to do. For me, cooking is therapy. For me, cooking for people gives me a huge amount of enjoyment. And I just, my daughter is a cordon bleu chef and she keeps sending me her presentations. And I said, I haven't even started. I need to take more courses. I self-taught myself during COVID from YouTube and I did okay.
So, I think in the life of every entrepreneur, some moments really stand out that made a difference. So I want to just ask you about 2 moments. It's a hard question again. I apologize. I want to hear about the moment where you thought everything is imploding, everything is over, the world is going to end. And then I want to hear about that moment that you believe was the inflection point for you and your career.
Again, when you're an entrepreneur, you'll get times where you think this is not going to work, bad idea, you're in a bad place, but you've got to be like a duck, which means you got to be very smooth on the top and paddle furiously under the water, okay? You can't let your team know, you can't let your competition know what's in your head, what's in your demeanor. You can't be looking like your back is broken and, nothing's going to work because your team's going to just infectious. The team's always looking to you. मैं एक दिन आता मुझे जुकाम होता मेरी टीम पूछी सर खैरियत okay because they're looking to you to be that leader. The first time around, as I told you, जब Tameer Bank हम कर रहे थे, so we started off very well. First year, I told you we were high on our arrogance, and we paid the price for that. फिर हमारे पास 3 महीने के पैसे रह गए थे, and that's the paper story. If Telenor had not invested in the bank at that time, State Bank would have taken that bank over. We had no other option. We were burning serious money, and this was the bank. It's not like a private company, jab band ho jati hai, nobody cares. In a bank, you've taken people's deposit, so you have fiduciary responsibility, and the central bank is watching every step you take. Yeah. So that was the key thing. That was the moment I said, I did not know after my second cigarette whether this was going to work or not. Okay? I thought these guys may just walk away. And it would have been, the team wasn't aware, but I knew what was going on. And I didn't want the team to be as aware. They were aware we were negotiating. When I sold Tameer Bank, I could sit with Baksas and ask for $100 million. I knew I could do bigger things. And I knew that I could do it if I collected the right amount of people with me. We could create, $500 million company because we've learned the hard way, we had the experience, and I think I'd learned how to negotiate, present, and execute, and I had a model in my mind to do things. So I think Planet and Company, some of them are doing exceptionally well. Some are going to be setting the trend in the market. Our Goldfin business, which is the gold ornament lending business, is just going to announce one of the biggest raises, in this
Congratulations.
environment. Okay. And Rakmi Bank, I think, is going to move the needle.
So you have a few other very interesting investments. What are the investments that you're the most proud of?
So, I mean, I think 5 or 4 investments stand out. The one investment I made was in a company called Simpesa. So these guys came to me. So the company, we started with a company called TapMad. TapMad is an OTT platform where you can watch television, sports, whole bunch of stuff on your phone. And the guy came to me. He used to be a quant, in Morgan Stanley in the UK. Used to make $1 million. Came over here, started his business. When he came to me, he was getting ready to pack up and go home because he just couldn't get integration with the telcos. So he had customers, but he didn't know how to collect money. उस वक्त में wallets नहीं थे, so you could only collect money through airtime. And he brought this whole stack of files and stuff. And I looked at him and I saw the guy. I said, super smart guy, just doesn't understand Pakistan. And I said, okay, I'll invest $500,000 in your company. I'd agreed on valuation. I was just flush with money, okay, at that time. I just sold Tameer Bank. पैसे ज़्यादा थे. Maybe के तुम्हारा दिमाग खराब हो गया. But anyway. So we created TapMad and we got the money integration to get money through airtime called direct carrier billing. So we did DCB. But then we wanted money from wallets. And then we created a separate company called Simpesa. वो company मैंने $1 lakh से शुरू की थी. That company is worth about $45 million right now.
It's more profitable than Jazz Cash.
Yeah.
MashaAllah.
Yeah, but that company throws off serious money. And it was the founders, and I just helped them get to the next level. Now this company that's in mission, they're in Bangladesh, they're in Nepal, the headquarters in Dubai, and they're just going from strength to strength. From collecting money, they're dispersing money, they've got an international aggregation play right now. So TapMad, Simpesa, Goldfin, okay? Goldfin, in Tameer Bank, when we were pivoting, we figured out that people wanted credit immediately, and the only asset they had was gold ornaments. So we figured out how to value those gold ornaments, keep them with us, make sure that we didn't have. So we didn't give money just because somebody wanted money, but we need to understand the purpose so they could get their ornaments back. So the same team created a company along with myself called Goldfin, based in Lahore, which I'm going to, and 2 of my co-founders are sitting over here. And Rakmi is going to be using them, as a channel partner, and they're going to do exceptionally well. This is going to be a $100 million company, okay? Because we've got I would say, 20 billion dollars of gold ornaments in Pakistan.
Fantastic.
Since the time Pakistan has been created, the imports of gold is about 10 to 15. It's the largest asset class, but just not registered. And people, then you can do innovation with fractional gold. Then we have WADA, which is a digital insurance broker.
Yeah.
And, all these companies are going to do exceptionally well. Then we have companies which are done well, but not exceptionally well. So the Planet and book will be the good, the bad, and the ugly, where we lost money, okay, where we made money, and where we think we'll make money.
You were talking about, what I'll say, flying very close to the ground. You're almost out of money. There's a bit of doubt, but there's a lot of promise as well. And just hanging in there and, trying to swim like a duck. I like that analogy. And I've seen this a few times. I think the Kareem story is a lot like your story as well. If that Uber deal hadn't happened, we probably wouldn't have had them. It was a great exit. So now across your portfolio, you're repeating that trauma multiple times again and again. And it doesn't always work. I mean, there are startups that fail. I'm sure in your portfolio, you've also lost money. But I think what's very important is that the returns that you get are outsized. They more than make up for all of the experiments that haven't worked. So that ability to constantly do this over and over again, there is a certain trauma. It's a birthing trauma, I think, a lot like a mother that, gives birth. But now you repeat this over and over again, and you feel the trauma because some startups actually fail. So you as an investor are going through that again and again. So, I think it takes a lot of vision to keep doing this, but it's starting to pay off, and it looks like now you're interconnecting those experiments that have worked and have created a multiplier as compared to what you invested. It looks like now you're putting another multiplier on top of that with the platform you're creating with
So
Rugby.
when I started, as an entrepreneur, I was 48. I'm 68 now. So I have 20 years of experience of losing money. And in one investment, I lost $3 million. Okay? And it was an investment that I knew nothing about. And God gives you a very humbling experience. You can't feel. I was feeling so high, anything I touch is going to turn to gold. And then God gives you a message, that you're a human. Figure out, do stuff that you know. Don't spray your money everywhere. We made a lot more money, recovered that money and made a lot more money, but that's a humbling experience. It tells you don't get everything right and get your sense right of do stuff that you're familiar, that you know something about. And that means, because we are in 20 different industries, that means I have to learn about 20 different industries.
Yeah.
The basics so that the first big ability you need to get is to learn how to read people and bet on people. And you don't always get that right. But you get it over a period of time because you're putting money on those people and you need to learn and figure out what to do. And there are many other lessons that come out of that, and they're very humbling in nature. Okay? Despite, I went through a time where, very honestly, I was asset rich and cash poor. Okay? And, many people can probably relate to that, but, on paper you had millions of dollars, and then, on the cash flow side, you were just managing. And that's a humbling experience because, you got to figure out but if I didn't take those risks, I wouldn't be where I am right. So you've got to just wait through that, learn through that, but if you don't take those risks, you're not going to. वो इकबाल का शेर है कि बेखतर कूद पड़ा आतिशे नमरूद में इश्क अकल है मैवे तमाशाए लबे बाम अभी. Essentially what it says is that if you're going to listen to the brain every time, your brain is going to tell you, are you crazy? This is a mad, decision you're making, don't do it. And sometimes you have to listen to your heart and say, this is what I'm going to do. And hopefully you get it right. And not just in matters of the heart, I'm talking about financial decisions.
I think that's the only way our country can move ahead. It's, people like you who have the passion and do things that sometimes might not be logical but have outsized impacts for the economy and for the country. So we thank you for that. I think we have 5 minutes left and we've got a great audience. So with your permission, what I'd like to do is just open it up and allow people to ask some questions. Ji, please.
Assalamu alaikum, ji. So I was just noticing 7 out of your 35 companies, and it's about 20% of your portfolio, is in aggregators and marketplaces. I was just curious as to what is the reason for that apparent leaning towards marketplaces, and just curious to learn a bit more about Islamic Metaverse, one of your companies.
So, aggregation, is the new black. I mean, Daraz is an aggregator, Food Panda is an aggregator, Monis is an aggregator. These are the solutions where you will find the biggest customer base. And then you need to figure out, are these aggregators, the efficiencies they're providing, how do you provide financial services with that? Tameer Bank was an individual play. Planet N is investing in entities which are aggregators because so that's why banking as a service that we're creating for Rakmi Bank is like an aggregator. We're telling multiple startups, multiple people with large customer base use us. We become an aggregator of financial services for them. Now, every bank does bank as a service. But here we are saying that imagine you've got a license. What are you going to do with this license? When I go to Monis and I say, you've got X million customers in Rosie and you've got their database, you want to lend them money? We'll take the risk. You want to do financial services with them? We'll take that risk. On the other side, he's got a lot of stuff that I'm going to be using. So it's not a one-way street. A lot of the stuff that these people, they can open accounts for me, they can do investments for me. Because Sharia I'm learning right now, but what I'm coming to the conclusion is that if you do Sharia right, the true Sharia, nobody in Pakistan does, and I can't do that right now, which is take the loss as well as the profit. But you can start off with actually tapering the profit with the level of fees you're going to charge. You make more profit, you share more. If you make less profit, you share less. So you're starting off with that. And people are, desirous of that kind of solution. Now, with the Kaibor sitting at 22 or 21%, lending becomes very expensive. But if you start figuring out lower cost of funds by providing Sharia solutions, then you can do an equitable deal. So that's the journey I'm starting right now. And that's what I'm saying, I'm going to learn about this. I'm reinventing myself the fourth time to understand Sharia. But it's very interesting what I've seen so far.
I wanted to take more questions. I think we're out of time. I think we're going to get knocked off the stage. Thank you so much, Nadeem Bhai. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, an honor.
Thank you.
And I'm sure you're going to reinvent yourself a few more times.